Hi and welcome to today's episode. My name is Gamu and this is Africana Podcast. So today's episode is my second episode of Conversations with Myself, and I'm actually really excited about what I will be talking about today, which is perspective. So stay tuned to find out more about that. So to start today's episode, I'm going to share with you a little story that my sister told me the other day that actually got me thinking about recording today's episode. Well, rather just deciding on the topic for today's episode. So she told me about this couple that lived in a house, and the wife was always telling her husband about the neighbors, talking about how dirty their clothes always were and how their car was dirty, just everything about their place was dirty. And she would always talk about it. And then one day she comes to her husband, she's like, oh, you won't believe it. Finally, these people have cleaned up, like their car's clean, their walls look clean, their clothes looked clean. And then the husband said, well, actually, it's because I cleaned the window. And it really got me thinking about how important the lens that we look through is important. Oh boy, what did I just say? I think you get the point, but the lens through which you look at life shapes and informs your opinions of yourself and of others, and just how you conduct yourself in the world, how you see other people in the world, what kind of value or importance you place on them. It's important to realize, of course, that we choose the lens that we see the world through. And I think more often than not, I know for myself, it's always more challenging to look at things from an optimistic perspective, which is really messed up, but there's a sense in which it's more comfortable or easier to imagine the worst case scenario, or to just kind of look at the world as this big horrible place where there's monsters that are going to come out to get you, and if you look at the world with that kind of lens, there will be lots of monsters in your way, because that's how you're choosing to see everything. If you look around you and you think there is lack, there is no opportunity, there is suffering and poverty, and that is my lot, for example, then that's all you're going to be exposed to, and that's all you're going to bring into your life, because that's the lens that you choose to see life through. And I'm not saying like when you change that perspective, it means you're going to have kind of the opposite, where it's like the rose-colored glasses and everything is just all happy chappy, there's no suffering in the world, and you're oblivious to anything that is evil or wrong. That's not what this is about. But it's more about changing your perspective and choosing to see and to look at things from a brighter perspective in general, and to look on the bright side, as it were. And not just for your sake, but for the sake of the people around you as well, and the people you interact with, and the people who come into your life, or who are in your life, like your family and friends and all that sort of thing. So the first topic I'm going to deal with is, when you think of optimism and pessimism, it's the same energy that's going into both patterns of thinking. So, for example, let's say you have a what if narrative going in your mind. You get to decide if you're going to go the pessimist way, or if you're going to go the optimist way. Either way, it's like you're expending the same kind of energy into thinking what if, etc. So it all boils down to, why not change your what if statements to something that is actually positive and start to kill the negative narrative. And it's like I said earlier, it feels more comfortable. Maybe comfortable is the wrong word to use, but it feels somewhat more comfortable to imagine the worst case scenario, or to expect the worst, and to not let yourself be vulnerable, and just kind of constantly wait for something bad to happen, because in a sense you feel like, I'm protecting myself from being vulnerable, and protecting myself from being hurt and disappointed and all that. But that's no way to live, and I have fallen prey to that a lot of times, where I will just not be hopeful and constantly expect the worst from people, so that when it does happen, then I'm not surprised. But I mean, first of all, no one's perfect. I mean, I know I'm not, and people are going to mess up all the time, but does that mean you can't ever give them a chance or just the benefit of the doubt? um Even in relationships, it's toxic to wait for something bad to happen, because then you could easily slip into a pattern of constantly accusing a partner of doing something or not trusting them and all that. And this is something I'm still learning, even just for myself, to not always expect the worst from people, but to give them a chance, and to just show more grace, and be kinder, and allow people the room to actually prove that they are good or can contribute meaningfully to your life and all that kind of stuff. And I mean, does that mean people will never mess up or whatever? No, but at least your energy and your position in how you see them and how you see life is not something that is depressing you and that's ultimately pulling you down and actually hindering you from developing meaningful connections with people in the sense of relationships, and then also hindering you from going forward and exploring opportunities that are presented before you. Because I mean, think about it. If people who run successful businesses were always very pessimistic about everything, and they didn't have the kind of success mindset or the outlook on life that is required for you to be successful, I mean, that there's a lot of risk taking in that and all that. And if you're looking at the world through a lens of everyone's out to get me, then you're never going to be able to actually step out of your comfort zone and take a risk that might be the springboard that pushes your career or your dream into a reality, So yeah, it's just, perspective is so important in relationships and in your career and everything. You've got to be able to look on the bright side and to not just expect the worst all the time, I guess. Okay, I'm going to go to the next segment before I just continue rambling on here. So in this segment, I'm talking about changing the narrative. So you've realized that you need to change your perspective or the lens that you see the world through. But really what this looks like in application is changing the narrative in your head, changing the stories that you tell yourself, changing your what if statements, changing your affirmations. It's quite interesting to see how many people affirm the very things that they're running from, constantly telling yourself, for example, that you're not good enough to do something, or that you're not good enough for this, or that you can't do that, or you can't do this, or whatever, or anticipating failure, that hinders you from stepping outside your comfort zone or even being able to accomplish a task, because you're constantly thinking about all the reasons why you are unable to do it. I was actually doing some research on procrastination, just what happens when someone procrastinates, like just what's happening in the mind. I was doing this for a YouTube video that I want to do, and also because I'm still trying to figure this procrastination thing out. But there are days where I really just cannot get myself to get started on things, and I really wanted to understand, look, what happens when we procrastinate. And it's really been interesting that a lot of it is because of that narrative that is in your mind and your perspective about whatever task is in front of you. So, your perspective really does shape how you conduct yourself, how you get through tasks, how you build relationships, and how you just interact with the world in general. So, yeah, I think something else that's been really standing out to me is just the necessity to hold on to hope, and to not let hope die. I think it's very easy when you've been hurt, disappointed, betrayed, blah blah blah, whatever those kind of whenever things like that happen that make you feel vulnerable and make you feel not so great, it's tempting to then not be hopeful, to completely disregard life having meaning, to continue to question the necessity of life even, or necessity of living. And I mean, it's unfortunate because then for some people it gets to the point where they commit suicide, or they just look at life as something that is not worth living and not worth putting any effort into, and you just kind of go through the motions of every day, do what you need to do, but your heart's not really there. You're not really trying to make genuine connections with people, and you're not pouring your heart into doing something that you actually love, So I think the first most important thing with changing the narrative is to hold on to hope and to have a hopeful perspective. And, it's a difficult thing to do, especially when you're going through a period where you don't have an idea of what's to come, and there's no kind of indication or anything that's kind of putting you at ease to say, okay, at least I'm on this path and this is going to happen and whatever. But when there's no indication of what's to come, and especially now with how the world is with the pandemic and whatnot, a lot of things for a lot of people are up in the air, and it's difficult to have hope in a situation like this. But it's almost also like one of the most important things to be having right now, for you to be able to wake up in the morning and get on with life, just holding on to hope and changing your what if statements and changing your affirmations, and not waiting for something bad to happen. If you look at anxiety and paranoia, there's a sense in which those things are rooted in constantly waiting for something bad to happen, or expecting something bad to happen. So you're like living in a world where you are saying, okay, for example, if someone is to break into my house right now, this is what I'll do. Or, silly scenarios like that in your head or whatever. And it's like, okay, but why can't you change that what if statement to be something else, and stop living in a mindset where you're waiting to be attacked, in a sense. Obviously, not necessarily always in the literal sense of someone breaking into your house, but like, you'll hear maybe people in relationships, or before they date someone, they're like, but what if this guy has other women in his life, so I'ma just also have other men in my life just in case, So, things like that. What if you change the what if statement and say, okay, what if this person is going to be faithful to me? So I'm also just going to be faithful to them. And if things don't work out in the end, at least you have remained true to yourself and to your values and to your principles. And you can walk away from that situation with your self-worth intact, so to speak, and your own values and things unshaken by the situation. So again, it's like having hope or looking on the bright side or being optimistic is not saying that you will never be hurt or whatever, but it's allowing yourself to be vulnerable, knowing that you could be hurt, but also knowing that you may not. And I mean, this applies in a business sense as well. Getting into business with certain people, then you might think, what if they're going to swindle me? Then I might as well not. But what if they don't? And then it's good for your business. So it's like, this can really be applied to any facet of life. Maybe you meet people and you're like, I could be friends with these people, but what if they are backstabbing, horrible people? And then you decide, no, you know what, I'm just going to keep to myself. But what if they're not? And what if they turn out to be the best bunch of people you've ever met or whatever? So I'm just trying to show how this is a concept that can literally be applied to anything. Changing your what if statements is a game changer. And I think a lot of people, I know, even just for myself, stopping myself from doing something because I'm like, but what if no one responds? Or what if, I wanted to start a YouTube channel for a really long time, for example, but I was like, what if no one subscribes? What if no one watches my videos? What if no one likes it and all that? And I had to change that statement and say, okay, but what if someone actually does like it, and that changed my my drive towards doing it. And I thought, you know what, I'm going to do it anyway, obviously, because it could very well be something that someone needs, but also because it's something I want to do, and it's going to give me so much peace and joy knowing that I've done something that I wanted to do for a long time and that I really enjoy doing. So yeah, having the wrong perspective and having the wrong what if statements stops you from doing so much, and it deprives the world of whatever it is that you are meant to give. So when you look at yourself as part of a bigger picture, you are a piece in the puzzle of the bigger picture. And if you don't do what you need to do, other things are not going to fit into place. I know it might sound like something that would generally put people under so much pressure, but we're all here to give something, you know, and to receive, but more to give. Even the Bible says it's more blessed to give than to receive. There's so much wisdom in that statement. And it's like, there's so much emptiness in living a life where you're just receiving. And for you to get to a point where you are giving, you have to change your perspective and your outlook on the world, on people, on how life works, on how the world works. It all starts in your mind. If you have a twisted perspective, and you're always pessimistic, then you're not going to be able to come into the fullness of who you are, so to speak. And look, it's not a matter of arriving somewhere. I feel like as humans, we're dynamic, we're constantly changing. If I've done a video on growth mindset versus fixed mindset, and how, if you have the growth mindset, you are basically acknowledging that life is a journey of learning and you're always a student, right up until you die. Even if you make it all the way to 100 years, you're constantly learning something. So yeah, I guess just getting into that mode of changing your perspective and changing your affirmations and your what if statements. It's not to say that then you will get to a point where you're like at the pinnacle of the mountain of life or whatever, but at least now you're on your way up. You're climbing upwards rather than being stagnant or tumbling down the hill, So yeah. My closing statement for this podcast actually is, again, something my sister told me that she heard somewhere, but I really liked it actually. She said that life is like, or rather, you have to think of life being like, there's a bus that you're trying to catch. And when you want to catch a bus, you go or go somewhere, you're going to prepare and do everything you need to do, and then you're going to go out to the bus stop and then wait for the bus. So it's like there's a sense in which you are hopeful, and there's a certainty that okay, the bus is coming, I need to do my thing, and I need to run and catch the bus, right? And you're going to see that, okay, the time's coming, I've got to run, and you're going to run and run and run and go to the bus stop and wait for the bus. And if you miss that bus, then you wait, because there'll be another one coming, So it's like having that approach to life is so important, because then it helps you to realize that just because there's been a missed opportunity or a heartbreak or a betrayal from friends or whatever, it doesn't mean that that is the end. The next bus is coming, and you've just got to continue to do your part and to continue to give what you are here on earth to give. Stay within your purpose, do your thing, and stay busy with your work and what you're supposed to be doing, and just remain in the mindset of knowing that you are always exactly where you need to be. And if you missed something, if you missed an opportunity, if you missed out on a relationship, if you missed out on a friendship, then that was just not meant for you. And you can wait in hope that what is meant for you will come at the right time. And you've just got to continue walking your path, walking your road, doing what you need to do, and remaining hopeful and expectant, and just changing the narrative, as I've been saying, and being optimistic. But yeah, I hope that you picked up a gem or two from this episode. I just really enjoyed the conversations that I've had around perspective, and I really wanted to just record something and share it, because I think more people will definitely benefit from hearing something like this. So all the best. Keep running. Your bus will come if it hasn't. You will not miss what's meant for you, and what's meant for you will not miss you. So yeah, live your life with that kind of perspective. Thank you so much for joining me for this episode. You can find me on Instagram. My username is Africana_Gamu, and my YouTube channel is Africana. So yeah, feel free to go and binge watch my videos. They're good, though I do say so myself. And you can also check out my Instagram. And yeah, let me know what you think about this episode and anything that you found inspiring or interesting. And yeah, let's continue to grow together into becoming self-actualized individuals. That's my whole brand, by the way. The whole purpose of what I'm doing with my podcast and my YouTube and all that is on my journey to becoming self-actualized, and I'm just documenting it and sharing it. So yeah, I'll catch you guys in my next one. Bye.